All right, we're going to do quick introductions. First of all, we're excited to be here at UNT. We were asked to wear green for game day. I don't have a green shirt, but if you squint really closely, this blue and yellow kind of merges into a green, so I'm trying to represent some UNT pride for your guys' game tonight. I am Mike Miner. I am a consultant at McKinsey. I've been with McKinsey for a little over a year. I live out in Flower Mound with my wife and 3 little boys. And excited to be here and kind of share this problem-solving experience with you guys. So we're excited. We're just going to quickly go through introductions, and then Salim's going to get us kicked off today.
Hey everybody, my name is Jay Shaw. I'm a business analyst in our Dallas office. I was telling some of the SDs that I went to TAM 7 years ago, so be nice to the 2 or 3 TAM students that are in here, because people were not very nice to me when I was a TAM student, and I'm still not. Yeah, they're still not very nice to me. Super pumped to be here. I think this is a great program. Really appreciate the opportunity to be a part of something so great, and very confident of the skills and values that the program instills. So looking forward to a great time.
And I'm Nathan. I'm a business analyst in the Dallas office as well, and grew up in Austin, so not too far from home. Really excited to be a part of this program. It seems like a great group, and I think we have a lot of good material to share, but what I'm also really excited about is just meeting some of y'all and hearing about kind of what you're interested in and questions that you might have, so we're looking forward to that as well.
Hey, good morning everybody. My name is Salim Zafar. I'm an associate partner with McKinsey in our Dallas office. I've been with McKinsey for about 5 years and started to get involved with UNT about 4 years ago. And I was telling some of the SDs earlier that once a year our Dallas office does engagement or a project with some element of our local community. So 4 years ago we had some relationships with the folks in leadership at UNT, and we thought, hey, would it be interesting if we got together and partnered to see how McKinsey could help UNT? And the leadership of the school felt like the business school would be a great place for us to invest some time. So at the time with Dean Finley Graves, we prioritized looking at the undergrad business program, and we went through the curriculum, the teaching method, the career service office, some of the branding, and all the other types of things that really help create a product for you as students that can help you accelerate your trajectories and get you prepared for the real world. And by the way, you guys should all have a ton of confidence in yourselves when it comes to real world, because if we can survive, I think you all will be fine. So one of the things that came out of that 10-week project that we had back in the summer of 2012 was, hey, PLP is a really high potential opportunity for the university to really accelerate the offering quality for students like yourselves. And we got to meet Billy then, and over the years we got to know Rachel very well, and that was how the CASE program was born. So for the last several years we've been helping get the CASE program up and running, and the purpose of the CASE program is really all about problem solving. And problem solving is one of those core skills that everyone has. And all of you in this room are problem solvers. Now, you may not think you're great at it, or you may think you're great at it, but wherever you are, we think we can help you get better. And that's what we're going to do over the course of the semester using this CASE program. So what we wanted to do here was give you a little bit of an overview of just problem solving in general, and the program that we're going to go through with everyone over the course of this academic year. So before we get started, just want to know if there's any burning questions that y'all want us to make sure to answer as we go through. And we'll make sure to do that as it relates to problem solving, the case, what you may have heard about this case coming into PLP, because we know it's been going on for a couple of years. So if there are maybe 2 or 3 questions, let us know those right now that we want to make sure to hit on as we go through. At the end, we'll save some time for a Q&A specifically. I would personally actually love to know, what have y'all heard about this part of PLP? Raise your hand if you've heard anything about this case study element of PLP before coming here. All right, cool. So there's nothing to dispel, nothing to build upon. Okay, great. Okay, so we can just jump in here. So what we're going to do today, 3 things. We're going to talk about the importance of problem solving, what problem solving looks like. We're going to go into the training program and how we want to build some of those skills. And then finally, we're actually going to deep dive into the problem solving process. At McKinsey, we're a management consulting firm. We have a global footprint. We serve clients full-time. That's our role. And we try to be counselors and we try to be advisors to top companies, top governments, organizations throughout the world. And we help them think through a lot of their issues related to strategy, operations, top-line performance, cost reduction, the whole gamut. And because we have so many types of clients and so many types of problems, over the 85 years that we've been in business, we have started to really hone in on what we believe is a very effective and efficient problem-solving process that can be applied to a variety of situations and help bring the best thinking together rapidly so that you can drive impact for organizations and clients. So what we are going to do here is literally transfer the McKinsey problem-solving process over to you. That way you can apply it in your academic settings, you can apply it in your internship settings, your post-grad stuff, and probably even personal life things where problem solving matters. So I remember 2 years ago when we were doing this, someone was asking a question about, I have to decide if I'm going to buy or lease my car. And we literally talked through that person's buy or lease decision using the problem solving process. So I think you'll be surprised at how applicable this can be.
Can you also just touch on for 30 seconds how this would be applicable in the actual case you'll be working?
Yeah, sure. So when you guys have the case program that's going to be coming through the business case we've developed here, there are a couple of steps for this problem solving process. We want to help you guys get an overview of what that problem solving process looks like today. That way you have familiarity with it when you go through the case. There'll be one case that'll be kind of the overall story that you're going to be focused on. And then each one of those sessions will focus on one of those elements or two of those elements of the problem solving process. And at the end, there'll be a presentation opportunity. Is there anything else I should hit on that? Okay. So a structured approach to problem solving. Okay, so this is all about building that toolkit. That way you can be effective in a few of these situations here. So here are a couple of examples of the types of things that our firm focuses on when we deal with clients. It's developing a more energy efficient process for creating cell phone batteries. What does that look like? What are the key issues that we need to focus on? How do you structure the problem and then go after it in a systematic way? Planning a merger, determining countries into which to expand, helping city governments improve response times for services, help pharma companies bring products to difficult parts of the world, and then what does the future of very critical infrastructure look like when it comes to technology and how can that be leveraged? So all of these topics that we talk about with our clients literally on a day-to-day basis can benefit from structured problem solving. In fact, I wouldn't say just benefit, but they're very difficult to actually solve without some problem solving process. So when you think about problem solving, what we wanted to share with you guys is think about yourself in a variety of situations where problem solving would matter. And if you didn't problem solve a situation, you're kind of letting yourself be at the whim of your circumstances and influenced by a lot of these external factors. When you have an approach that's focused on very focused problem solving, you can take control of situations and you can be less subject to kind of outside influences. And a lot of times the folks that have a point of view and a perspective and can drive some progress quickly in their group end up becoming those leaders. And given that you guys are in the professional leadership program, this is a real opportunity for you guys to build some of those types of skills that allow you to influence groups, influence teams, and get to really great outcomes. So what we wanted to do here is turn the mic over to a couple of folks that have gone through the program. So your SDs are all experienced veterans with all types of knowledge and wisdom. So should we start with you? Here, let me give you the mic.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Xavier Sykes. I'm an SD, senior finance major. I went through this program last year, and I can tell you that this McKinsey project really has a great impact. I actually had no idea what to do at first when this was first introduced, But through this program, through this case study, it really developed my skills in problem solving so much so that I was able to implement this in my internship that I had this summer. I work for a marketing company called Ivy and Associates. We had a client come to us and they needed to they had a target market that they wanted us to reach out to and help get their business. So we had about 19 interns. None of us really had any idea of how to even handle this problem. But I had the background of the McKinsey case study in my back pocket. And so I was able to basically explain to them how I would go about handling it. And immediately they felt like I had good insight and good knowledge on the best way to handle this problem. With that, I was able to become kind of one of the leaders of the whole problem solving group. I was on the marketing strategy team. I could have been on any other team, but I was one of the planners, the directors of the whole program, of the whole project. And we were able to basically solve the problem that the client came to us with, and they loved it. CMOs, CFOs, all there. We presented to all those people, and we were all really blessed to have, I guess, this McKinsey case study experience in our realm. So it is really great. I felt like we would have been chickens with our heads cut off if we didn't have this with us. And I can tell you can tell the difference between the people who have this experience and the people who didn't. Because a lot of them just like, I have no idea what to do. I'm lost. But with the McKinsey case study, I was like, hey, let's get it like this. We were a lot more structured. Things went a lot more smoothly than they could have been. So it was a blessing to have McKinsey. So.
Hey guys, my name is Mal Farouk. I am a senior biology major here. And one thing that I have benefited the most from the McKinsey case consulting last year was not only how to efficiently problem solve, but also working with people outside of my field. So being a biology major, I am typically used to working with science majors, chemistry, biology, and you don't often think that that you would need to work with people outside of your field, but as I'm getting more exposure to working in a hospital or different clinic settings, I'm learning that there are different types of people I need to interact with. And so one thing that I have been able to use for McKinsey is I have used it on a lot of my medical school applications. So because they always ask you, oh, what is an experience that had you work in a team outside of your usual cluster or group? And so I have written tons and tons of details about my experience working with business majors, economics majors, liberal arts majors, and it's really just taught me how to interact with the different people. So that's why I find it very beneficial. And I have been actually asked in an interview for one of my organizations describe an experience that kind of stepped you out of your comfort zone and that you were working with a team, and I talked about the McKinsey consulting case last year. So I think that's a lot of questions that come up in grad school applications and also in med school, dental school, pharmacy school applications. So if you're a STEM major, this will definitely help you.
All right. Anything that you guys want to add to this? That any of the SDs, anybody else? Is there anything you want to jump in and share? Kind of your experience last year, what this felt like, what it meant for y'all. He's like, you're trying to volunteer, aren't you? I see this head nod. He's sitting in the front row going
Salim, I can say something real fast.
yeah, okay.
I actually used McKinsey, kind of the problem-solving deal when it came to figuring out what internship I wanted to take back in December. I had a few opportunities, one in out-of-state, one at Bell Helicopter in Georgia, and then one here in downtown. So kind of doing the benefit and cost ratios on every single aspect of it How close am I going to be with family? How far? Is it going to pay off more here or more there? What am I going to learn? What experiences do I want to take away from going out of state and going within state? So I kind of consulted a few mentors and picked their brains on which route to really go. Since I've already done a corporate finance internship, I was like, maybe it's a good time to diversify, so I went towards banking. So that was just a simple example I did, getting the problem, analyzing it, defining it, and then taking a decision.
Very cool. Anyone else?
Good morning, everyone. I'm Reggie Davis, Logistics Supply Chain Senior, also a student director. With the McKinsey consulting case, helped me actually in a class that I'm taking right now. It's a class that we're working with at company. We're going to a project that lasts all semester. It's really a consulting project. So excuse me. But with this project, I'm actually working as a business analyst, and they basically give us a problem at the beginning of the semester. We have the entire semester to solve the problem. So if nothing else, I can go into this project with complete confidence that I know how to attack a problem. Even if I don't know the answer ahead of time, I know how to attack a problem. Excuse me, guys, I'm afraid. I'm trying to talk too fast, but yeah, I can go in there with complete confidence and know how to attack a problem. I know other people who might not have this experience, but they might have the technical background, so we can work together to get the problem solved. So.
Great. So we're going to hit real quick on what the academic year is going to look like for you guys with a focus here on the fall. So what you'll see here on the left-hand side of this page is the dates of some of these key touch points and milestones that we've got, some details on what the activity is going to look like, what the activity is going to be, and then who's going to be driving it. So what you can see here is today we're at the kickoff session. So what we're going to do, as we talked about at the top, is the importance of problem solving, what the year is going to look like, and then do a little bit of an introduction to the problem solving process itself. Then you're going to have 3 case sessions. Those case sessions are going to be 1 or 2 weeks apart. We're going to roll out the shampoo case problem statement, which you guys are going to learn about and know very intimately before this thing is all said and done. The idea here will be, how can you apply what the problem-solving process is teaching to a scenario that could represent the type of situations you'll be dealing with going forward? And I think, going back to one of the things that Amal was talking about, the idea here is you don't solve problems by yourself, and you solve problems in teams. A lot of times people on teams aren't going to have the exact same set of experiences and the exact same set of skills and capabilities. So it's really about how do you get that team to work effectively together. The other thing that is going to come out here as an important side learning is the importance of making progress. And sometimes we talk about how perfect can be the enemy of good. And if there's an emphasis on getting the most right answer, you get to some point of diminishing returns where you can try to keep doing the extra analysis and you're just taking more and more time. You might not be actually getting any better of an answer. So having this type of an experience will help you develop that instinct that says, are we good enough right now with our perspective here to move forward, or do we need to do another 15 versions of this math problem? Once those 3 case sessions are done, there's going to be this kind of capstone session, which will be case presentations, where folks will get the opportunity to practice communication skills, the ability to take a lot of the points of view that the team has developed over the previous weeks and synthesize that together in a good coherent message, and then share that. And then the last piece is going to be understanding how this felt. How did it go, right? Did people get the opportunity to learn in the way that they wanted? What did folks do well? What are some opportunities to improve? And we'll be able to practice some feedback and coaching, because looking around this room, you guys should feel like it's not the folks in the gray shirts, it's not us, it's not Billy and Rachel from whom you'll be doing all of your learning, but you'll learn from each other. And you guys will end up becoming each other's confidants as you're going through job search processes or other issues you're dealing with. You'll probably feel like those folks in your small group during PLP, during this case type thing, are the kinds of folks that you can go to and trust. Hey, they'll give you some good sound advice. because you're coming from that kind of common place of structured problem solving. So the case sessions, this is a little bit of a double click into what those 3 case sessions will look like. So on the left-hand side, you see September 14th, 28th, and 5th. Here's what those are going to be. Like we said, they're an hour, so you got kind of 4 chunks, 10 minutes, 25, 10, and 5 minutes here. The idea is going to be, let's review the problem, let's understand what we're trying to discuss. Then you'll break out into your smaller groups for about half of that total allocated time in the session to do the work you're going to do. Come back together and share some perspectives with the broader group. And then the facilitators will wrap up and give kind of an overview. Hey, here's where we stand, this is where we landed on this problem, and it'll set the stage for the following session. Sound good? Okay, so I'm going to hand the mic over for Nathan to talk about the hard stuff.
Awesome. So yeah, now that we've covered a little bit of why this process is important, and I loved what the 4 SDs said about how many different situations this can be applied to. I think that rings so true in my experience as well. So now that we've talked about that, we can actually dive into a little bit of what is this problem-solving process that we're talking about. So this page gives an overview of the problem-solving process. And so what I'll do here is walk through kind of how each of the 4 pieces fit together, and then we're going to dive into each of these 4 and give a little bit of details of the tools and specifics around how we do this. So as you can see, the 4 steps are: first, define the problem and kind of understand what it really is, the question you're trying to answer is, and something that might be kind of underrated but extremely, extremely important. Once you've fully aligned with your group or team on what the problem that you're solving is, you move into the structure of how you're going to solve it. So I'm sure you've been on a group project before where everyone starts going off and kind of has their one-off ideas and starts pursuing their own thing. And it's like very confusing about how you're going to go about solving this. So the structure is kind of your game plan into getting to the answer. And then third is kind of crunching the numbers and running the analysis. And this can be anything from interviewing folks and understanding kind of more about the situation to, running profit and loss and like all these numbers. So kind of the hard work is in the analyze part. And then the last and final point, which is key, is synthesize. And that was a word that was relatively unfamiliar to me before I joined McKinsey, but is now something that I really appreciate. And what that means is after you've done all the analysis and you've gone into all the details and you can say, I know all the numbers behind this, you really have to take a step back and come up for air and say, okay, what does this all mean? Like, what is our answer to the original question that we're asking? And that's what synthesis means, of saying, okay, we've got all this information, but now here's our final answer, and here's like the 3 reasons why it's our final answer, and your analysis will support that. So does that make sense? Any questions on that before dive into each one? Cool, you got it down already. So the first part of this, again, is defining the problem. And this part, you create what's called a problem statement. And there you are trying to understand, again, what is the question that we're trying to answer. And so one of the kind of tools or frameworks that we use to define a good statement is this SMART framework. And have any of y'all used this in any other context? Have you seen this SMART framework before? Like, raise your hand. Cool. Yeah, where I learned it before was goal setting and making sure like your goals are SMART. So that's where I had heard it. But it also applies to problem statements. And I think where this might come to life is with a little bit of an example. So a problem statement that is not SMART might be, say, Ford brought us in and they want us to help with their electric cars growth. And so your not smart problem statement could be, how can Ford grow its electric cars business? It's like, okay, that sounds like, you know, a problem to solve, but it really doesn't give you some of these specifics that the SMART provides. So a more actionable and measurable one would be, how can Ford sell 1 million electric cars by 2020? And so what that gives you is a specific goal. You know whether you've hit success or not, and it gives you a time bound, and it allows you to fully align on what your criteria for success are. And this is kind of the problem statement worksheet. And what that means is it's a bunch of questions that you should ask at the beginning to make sure that you've got the whole team aligned on what it is you're trying to do. And so the problem statement goes at the top. Like, we know we're trying to sell 1 million electric cars. And so then you can ask a lot of different questions around, you know, what exactly is an electric car? Is a hybrid car considered electric? Like, there's a lot of context questions that you're going to need to understand. Success criteria, you should have it in your goal, but you can lay it out specifically here. Scope is like, okay, we're only going to look at North America. We don't know anything about Europe, so let's knock that off the table. And you can start to shape your problem. And so as you go through and fill all of this out, it helps you as a team understand, okay, here's the problem we're trying to solve. Here's all the different pieces of it. Now we feel like we're really ready to go and can jump into this in a confident way. So, let me go back one here. So, now that you've defined the problem, you can set about making your structure to be able to solve it. And the key thing that we use at McKinsey to solve problems and structure our problems are called issue trees. And what that means is you set out your problem statement, and then you set out specific areas that you're gonna tackle that together will help you solve the problem. So again, going on the electric cars theme, the problem statement is, how are we gonna sell electric cars? These 3 issues are gonna be the ways that you might do that. So that would be, you know, we're gonna create a brand new type of electric car. That might be one way to do it. Another one might be, you know, we're gonna take the cars we already have and just convert those to electric. And so it's all the different kind of hypotheses or ideas you have can be put into this framework and say, if we cover these 3 things, like, we feel like we'll be able to answer the question. And then you can kind of break it down from there. So, you know, building a new car, you can get really specific into the types of cars and things like that. And you can start to build out this whole framework of saying, this is like our game plan going forward. And once we cover all of these things, we'll be able to answer the question. So, any questions on that? I know I'm going relatively quick, but does that make sense? It's not? All right. And so this next slide talks about kind of what makes a good issue tree. And McKinsey is a saying around McKinsey that we have a lot, that we want to make things McKinsey. And what that means, as you can see, is mutually exclusive and collectively exhaustive. And so what that means is, when you're making your issue tree, you don't want it to just be random ideas strewn about that together either overlap or don't get you to the right answer. So starting with mutually exclusive, it just means that each area that you're going to cover is separate from itself. So, like we said, building a brand new car is separate from converting your existing cars. Whereas if you said, we're going to build a brand new sedan, and then your other idea was to build a brand new SUV, those would overlap. And if you had somebody like tackling each part of that problem, they would kind of not, they would overlap in the type of work that they were doing, and it wouldn't necessarily lead you to the right answer. So mutually exclusive just means all things are separate. And then collectively exhaustive means we've covered the whole spectrum of ideas. So there's no other way to sell cars besides make a new one or convert our existing ones. There's just no other way to do it. There's no other kind of routes you can take. So making sure that you've covered all the different areas is important. You don't just want a couple one-off ideas. So that is the process for defining the problem, understanding and getting together as a group and saying, okay, here's exactly what we're gonna do and what we need to solve. And then saying, all right, here's how we're gonna do it. These are the areas we're gonna look into. And from there you can start to break off the work. And I'm gonna hand it over to Mike, who is gonna talk about the analyze and synthesize part of the process.
Well, while Mike's grabbing the mic, I just wanted to add a little bit of context here. You know, a lot of times when we sit down with our clients at the beginning of our engagement projects, what we find is that sometimes the problem that they thought they wanted us to come on board and help them with isn't actually the real problem. So when you get into it and they say things like, we want to sell more electric vehicles. So we'll say, okay, well, let's come up with a problem statement. And then we decide, hey, maybe a good, smart problem statement would be, let's sell 1 million electric vehicles by 2020. We'll start to proceed down the path of validating, is that the right problem statement? By speaking with the stakeholders, testing the context, figuring out what are the other constraints that we have. And what we might find out is they want to sell more electric vehicles because they're struggling mightily in one of their major markets on conventional vehicles. And what they're trying to do is use the electric vehicle problem. If we could only solve that, that might somehow help extinguish a part of their bigger problem that they either don't fully respect or understand, or enough people have really galvanized and communicated and just bravely stood up and said, hey guys, the real problem here is we can't sell Ford F-150s in North America because we're, Toyota Tundras are eating our lunch. And if no one says that, and you haven't really gotten to that conclusion, you can come up with a great answer for how to sell 1 million electric vehicles by 2020, only to set yourself up to have to answer yet another question that is still masking the core question that needs to be asked. So, when you think about why is it important to define the problem statement, why is it important to build out the issue tree and have those kind of conversations, what you're really trying to get to is confidence that we're doing the right work at the right time. And I think Mike probably going to touch on some of that too as you get in here. But anyways, just want to give a little bit of a context for why that matters.
Yeah, thanks, Celine. And I think that also kind of makes the point of being collectively exhausted, because as you build out that issue tree and you're collectively exhausted, some of those points you think come to light. Now there's a challenge with being collectively exhaustive, especially as we move into analysis. What do you guys think that might be? You've now created an issue tree with 20 different little nods on it, and all require different analysis to prove out your hypotheses. What's the challenge with that? Yes?
If you're running a finance major, sophomore, I think the hugest problem would be like deciding which one's the first one we should start off with, because there's so many.
Right. So, perfect. Yes. Just shout from up there.
Okay, Bernicia Martin, junior, HR major. I think a large problem would be the amount of time you have.
Yeah. We work under constrained time. We have a 12-week internship we're doing. We work in 12-week engagements typically. You don't have forever, unless the government has wrote you a blank check, you don't have forever to do all of the analyses. You need to prioritize it. So you go through your lever tree that was collectively exhaustive, but then you say, here are the 5 analyses we think we can do under this 10-week period. Now, how would you guys prioritize? What are some of the criteria you would use to prioritize your analyses?
Joseph Benso, economics major, senior. I would do whatever the least expensive method is that gives you the greatest return on your investment.
So a little bit of a ROI analysis, right? Yeah, so impact. What's the biggest impact? That's an easy way to prioritize it. Where do we think we can have the largest impact based on the amount of investment we have to make? Great. What else?
Tony Thomas, PCI's majors junior. I think relevance to the problem is the ultimate solution that you have relevant to actually solving the problem.
Very good. Again, being collectively exhaustive, some of them might be out of left field. What's the most pertinent? I think that's great. What else?
Edgar Rangel, finance major, sophomore. I would think also thinking about which one can you do first in order to do the other problems as well. Like
Okay.
which one should you start off so you could build off and solve the other problem and then like a domino effect on it.
There's a little bit of sequencing. Yeah, I agree. Also, timing, right? Some of these problems, one of the solutions for the electrical vehicle is, hey, we have this technology we can develop, we think we can develop, but it's 10 years out. Well, obviously, the timing isn't going to line up with maybe what the key stakeholders, if they're looking for an impact within the year. So what's the timing? We talked about what's the feasibility? What are the risks involved? But you need to go through it and prioritize what the analyses are, because you can't do all the analyses that you've identified. So there's a prioritization process. The next one, which we talked a little bit, don't let the perfect be the enemy of good. So we use the saying 80-20, which is basically 20% of the effort can usually get you 80% of the answer. The answer may be, we think there's growth in this market of 15%. You could spend an extra 3 months pushing the analysis further, and the answer becomes 16.7%. 15 and 16.7% on most business problems aren't that significant. Now, for you math majors, don't go to your math professors and say, I use the 80-20 rule and I'm in the ballpark. It's good enough, right? But for a lot of these types of problems, again, we're working under time constraints. You only have 10 weeks to get to a problem. They want to know directionally, is it 15%, is it 5%, is it 30%? But the difference between 15 and 16.7%, which could take a lot of your time, isn't super valuable. And especially as you guys go through the shampoo case, you guys are working under a lot of time constraint. So remember this rule. I know some of you may have the tendency, like, I need to have the exact answer. Be sure to kind of step back and say, hey, does this get me close enough and point me in the right direction? Any questions on this? Next, the tendency as you kind of dive into these analyses is you get so close to the data and so deep in the analysis that you forget what you're solving for and what it means in the broader context of the problem. So as you do it, what does 15 mean? Is that good? Is that bad? Let's take a step back and kind of put it against the problem we're solving to understand what that actually means and how it influences other parts of the problem. So just be sure as you go through some of the analyses, pull back. As we go through and do interviews and we do case problems in our interviews, we'll usually have an analysis section and everybody comes to an answer and they're like, the answer is 16.7 or 15. The answer is 15. So what? We always ask that, well, so what? So what does that mean? Ask yourself when you come to the end of an analysis, so what? What does that mean? So you've done the analysis, you've got these wonderful results, you build out the issue, you define the problem, you built out the issue tree, you prioritize different analyses, you go through, you come out with good results. Now what? Well, now you need to synthesize your answer, you need to be able to communicate that to whoever it is, whoever the key stakeholders are. So we go through building out storylines or storyboards. It's a form of communicating what you just learned to a broader audience. Why do we do it? Improve the clarity of communication. How do we do it? You're going to do it in all sorts. We're going to work on a little bit of a presentation with the shampoo case. We're also going to work on an email communication. Email communication, as you can guess, is a very common form of communication with other team members. For us, it's up to leadership, to the client, and so we're going to focus a little bit on how do you communicate your answer via email. So you actually write an email as part of this exercise. And then from the beginning, you're always kind of bringing the people along. One of the key is as you go through the process is to bring people along, just so you don't show up on the last day and be like, here's the answer, because they want to understand the process a little bit, depending on who the stakeholder is. Any questions on that? Okay. I know we have 10 minutes left. We want to leave a little time at the end for Q&A. I'm going to move through it a little quickly, but please raise your hand if I'm moving through it too quickly and you want to ask anything. So what do we mean by a storyline? A storyline basically outlines the main ideas of the solution or what research you've done. What we like to usually do is we'll have an executive summary up front. We lead with kind of what the answer is. A lot of times we'll do this in the form of a situation, complication, and resolution. It's very clear to whoever you're communicating what the situation is, what complication came along, and then what you believe the resolution is or what your recommendation is. Then the storyline that follows basically provides additional detail on all of the points you made in that executive summary. A lot of times it'll take the form of a pyramid. The top of the pyramid is, what's the answer? Usually you can tell your answer to a problem in a sentence or two. Even though you just spent 12 weeks working on it, it's amazing you can distill it into a sentence or two. But then behind that sentence or two is kind of what are the three main ideas that you worked on. I'm going to move to this next one. And then under that is all of the analyses. What I think people have a tendency, and what I would tell you is, because you've been so involved with the analyses, you usually want to share all of the analysis you've done and all of the interesting insights into intricacies of the analysis first. What I would tell you about storyline is hit the answer first. And then you'll eventually, depending on who the audience is and how much into the detail you get, you'll get to the initial analysis. We're excited about the analysis we do. It's great, it's cool. But use the pyramid principle to lead with the governing thought, then what are kind of the supporting details below. What is the application of this communication? I think this is actually key. Where are you going to use this? Emails, meetings, interviews. As you guys go through the interview process, I'm guessing some of you guys will be recruiting for full-time or internships coming up. Think about how you communicate in this form. It's more effective and it allows the listener to follow along. And then the last thing I would mention is you've come away, you've done all the 4 steps, you've got this answer. Go back to step 1, this problem statement, and do a little bit of a sanity check. How does your answer match up to the question you identified in this problem statement worksheet? Have you met the perspective of all of the key stakeholders? Did you stay within the scope of the solution space? It's kind of just, again, that good sanity check at the very end to make sure you address the initial problem. The last thing I'm going to pass it over to Jay to talk a little bit about, so that is the problem statement, but we want to touch on team room dynamics a little bit and what makes us a successful team, and then we'll open it up to Q&A.
Thanks, Mike. So Salim said something at the beginning of this session, thank you, that I think is really true. The value of this program is going to come primarily from your interactions with each other as colleagues and as students. So there's a couple key things that really make for a good team environment. I'm not going to go through all of these things, but I would encourage all of you to be very thoughtful about how you interact with each other and how you engage with each other. There's a couple things that we're going to emphasize in this deck. The first is communication. I'm going to let your SDs take the lead on this. We had a conversation about what good communication looks like, and it's very consistent with what Mike just shared, so I'm not going to spend time talking about this. What I do want to talk about is feedback. Raise your hand if, after an exercise or a project, at the end, you spent time with your partner or your group and you said, hey Jay, these are the 2 things you did really well, and this is the one thing that I think you should improve on. Here's some ideas on how to do that. How many of you have formally done that as part of your classroom assignments? A couple of you, a handful of you. This is something that is extremely common, and we were having a conversation with the SDs about this as well. At McKinsey, we do this almost every 2 weeks. So what does good feedback look like? All of you should go into this program with the expectation that you will give each other feedback, and you will also receive feedback, not just from your peers, from Billy and Rachel, but also, not just from your SDs and Billy and Rachel, but also from your peers. So what does good feedback look like? I like to think of it in 4 main steps. The first is to be super fact-based. Feedback is not about your feelings, your perspective, it is about the problem you're trying to solve. So the first thing you want to do is anchor in, what are your real observations? What are the facts around the situation? So things like, not, you offended me, but hey, these are 3 things you said that I noticed. The second thing is to talk about impact. So why is this feedback important? So you could say, hey Jay, you came off as combative when you said that this was a really stupid idea. The impact of that was you hurt Salim's feelings and he doesn't want to work with you anymore or contribute to the group. Whenever you make it impact oriented, it's super clear why we're having this conversation. The third step is to pause and reflect and let the other person have a chance to speak. Feedback should be a 2-way conversation, not a 1-way imposition of, hey, this is what I think you need to do, right or wrong. Giving the other person a chance to share their thoughts in the middle of feedback is going to ensure that it resonates with them and they're going to feel like you guys are on the same page. The last step is to give suggestions for improvement. After giving feedback, what are some ways that you could take this feedback and address it? So you could say, hey Jay, next time I might just frame it as, this is a great idea, but I don't think we can conquer it in the time that we have. Or we just don't have enough people on the team to work on something like that. Giving suggestions is giving essentially the other person a clear opportunity and way to improve on whatever feedback you've given them. So let me pause there and see if you guys have any questions on the 4 steps of giving effective feedback. Okay, very clear, no questions. So let me, in this deck, which we'll share with you, there's a couple examples of what good feedback looks like. I'm not going to go through these examples, but I want you guys to promise me that you're going to read them after we leave. That was a bad joke. Here's a template. We will give you this template at the beginning of the sessions, and you can use this throughout the course of the program to document, when does somebody do something well, when does somebody do something that they can improve on. And when time comes in session 3 for you to give each other feedback, you should refer to your templates to make sure that you guys are being super thoughtful and sharing from your previous observations. So I'm going to open it up for questions with the rest of the group. I know we went through a lot of content, but would love to hear, what are some things that are on your minds, how can we be helpful in, making this a more clear and tactical, presentation for you in the program. Yeah.
Joseph Benson, senior economics major. How would you deal with receiving pushback during the whole feedback process when you're trying to give somebody feedback and they just don't exactly feel the way that you do about something?
Yeah. So I think the first thing is, the context setting. I think all of us being in this room together and talking about feedback culture and being important, I think it's helpful because now we're all in the frame of mind that we're expected to give and receive feedback. The second thing that I would say is it's really important to be fact-based and impact-oriented, right? So it's very difficult to not understand where the feedback is coming from if you say, hey, this is an outcome from your actions that could have been different, right? When you explain it in a super logical way like that, I think it resonates a lot more with people. Giving and receiving feedback is very challenging, and a lot of you probably are going to be doing this in this format for the first time. So if you feel a little bit uncomfortable, that's perfectly normal. What I would encourage you to do is push past the discomfort and get familiar and be open to the feedback, because your peers, just by the nature of how you're selected to be a part of this program, are very thoughtful about these things and are truly here to make you a better person and a better colleague. So that would just be my 2 cents to that question, but I think it was a great one.
Can I just add
Yeah,
one thing?
yeah.
I think with feedback, we usually have a tendency to think about the negative feedback. I would just also highlight, which is a harder conversation, and I think that's where, how do you navigate that? The person's likely to be a little defensive. I think the steps we lay out there help mitigate that defensiveness and make it more about how do we how do we work on this moving forward. I would also just highlight and encourage you guys through this feedback process to highlight their strengths. So something we try to emphasize as well is being strengths-based feedback. You guys are very bright individuals, very successful individuals. You guys are going to see a lot of strengths from your teammates. Just be sure to highlight that. We actually, through our firm, we do a lot of study on the value of providing strengths-based feedback, and we actually have learned that people, when you highlight their strengths and emphasize those strengths moving forward, they are much more likely to be brilliant in that sphere than if you always are focusing on what they're not doing well. So while feedback can be a tough discussion, especially when you're saying, hey, here's something to work on, I would just tell you to also be sure to emphasize a lot of the things they're doing well and learn from your peers, because you guys are going to have different strengths and different skill sets that you bring to the table. Okay, other questions?
We can probably take a couple more. Is that right? Yeah.
Edgar and Gail, finance major, sophomore. I was wondering, how should the structure of leadership be? Should it be like everybody is a leader in itself, or like one central leader? How should we organize that? Because I know sometimes there's a problem with too many chiefs in one group and getting into conflict and certain things like what idea we're going to go to. How should we confront that issue?
The case. Yeah. What's the structure?
I would look to your SDs for guidance there. I think that's the role that they're going to play. They're going to help facilitate the conversation. I think the types of things you're talking about, this is going to be a good experience for you to kind of understand group dynamics and deal with those things. But as far as a formal leader, I would look to your SDs to provide guidance on how do you approach the problem. How should you think about ideas? Because that's really what their role is for, and I think they're going to be great at it.
And I'll just add one.
Yeah.
When you get into your groups, have that conversation with the SDs. It's something we discuss as a potential for rotating leader between the different sessions. And so maybe that makes sense, but talk about what structure makes the most sense. There definitely is a tendency to have too many chiefs in a team room or too little chiefs, right? And no one wants to kind of step on each other's toes. So have that conversation, and one potential is to have kind of a rotating leader for each session.
I think one thing also more broadly is when you look at an issue tree, each of those branches, you can have somebody that leads on that branch. So you can kind of own that part of the problem, and you're the leader for that. So you may not be the overall team leader, there may just be one of those that you rotate through, but you're still like having a leadership role and owning the thinking on that piece of it. That's how our teams work a lot of the time.
Thank you.
Any other questions? If not, I think, yeah, we can pass it.
Thanks, everybody.
Okay, so are you officially waking up now? It's a great way to start. I want to explain a few things about this great team. We've worked with McKinsey actually since I've been on board, since 2012, and Celine has been with us all 4 years, and they created this process just for our students. So no one else in the United States that I know of does this with McKinsey. And so we are very fortunate and very thankful for them donating their time. Coming up on weekends, they all live actually in Dallas, so they drove through the rain to Denton this morning. And so, it's been amazing to see this evolve as somebody who's been a part of it from the beginning, but it's so interesting to see how this infiltrates different areas of your life. So this might seem like something that you have to use only with business cases or with problems that you see in a homework problem or something like that. But the truth is that you apply this in a lot of different areas. I don't know, Jay, did you share about how you got your girlfriend with this process? Oh, I'm sorry. Was I not supposed to say that?
No, you were.
Oh, okay. I was like, somebody told me to.
I'm so glad we ran out of time.
Yeah, that's what it was. All right. So you guys hound him before he leaves and have him tell you his story about his girlfriend and using issue trees and yeah, good.
He's so romantic.
Yeah. He's an engineer. It's all right. We love you. All right, guys. So what we're gonna do is you guys have about a 10-minute break. There's still coffee and fruit and some yogurt and good stuff out there. So eat up, fuel up, caffeine up, and then we're gonna come back for a few minutes to sit with